So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to score 760 on the GMAT. My name is Rajat Sedana. I'm one of the co-founders of eGMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. Supporting me in this session is Sandeep. Sandeep is a senior GMAT strategy expert, and he's going to be your co-host today. Essentially, he's going to make sure that, as we go through the session, if you have questions that are relevant to the content that we are talking about, those questions, you get answers to those questions. So that way we get done with the session in about 2 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes or so. And when each one of you, get your appropriate questions answered. And I want to just focus on the word appropriate, because if you ask a question which is outside the scope of the session, such as how do I go in and solve this particular geometry question, then that's something that we won't be able to address in this session. In the geometry session tomorrow, yes, but not in today's session. Okay. With that, I have about 100 students here, and to make sure we do justice to you guys as a group, I ask a couple of leading questions. One of them is, when do you plan to take the test? If you've not responded to this one, please do so. The other question that I have is, what is your target GMAT score? Let's get that question here as well. And then a third question that I'm going to ask is, where do you plan to apply? Which geography do you plan to apply to, and what kind of schools do you plan to apply to for your MBA or masters? So, and again, these choices are mutually exclusive. M7 is the Magnificent Seven. You've Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Columbia, and so on and so forth. Booth. Top 20, if your primary focus is top 20, which is excluding M7, then choose that. If you're looking at a USB school which is excluding T20, top 20 and M7, and then choose that option. European B school, LBS, INSEAD, Oxford, Cambridge, HEC, so on and so forth. Look at that. If you're looking at ISB and so on and so forth, choose that option. Let me actually broadcast results over there as well. Okay, very, very interesting stats over here with regards to when do people plan to take the test. I'm going to start from the bottom right-hand corner. About 35% if you've not taken a data as of yet. And then we have the next biggest group, that's 46 to 75, and then we have 31 to 45, and it kind of this is a nice bar chart with the top bar being the shortest. We have a few folks who have the test in the right way. Okay. With regards to the target GMAT score, it's not pretty like that. Quite a few students who are aiming for that 99 percentile or higher, about 31 of you. And then the 730 to 750 bracket, about 40% of you are there. And similarly, about 710, 720, about 18% of you are there. And then we've about 7% of students in that 600 to 700 bracket. And with regards to where people are applying to, I can see about half of you are applying to a USB school, whether it's M7, T20, or outside of T20. And then about 10% or about 20% applying to Indian B schools, and another 20% applying to European B schools. And we have about 10% of you who are applying to other B schools. I'm actually a bit curious about others, so if you don't mind, I'd like to take some time to figure out those who've chosen others. Which schools are you applying to? If you would be gracious enough to type this out over here, just Rotman is Canadian, so yeah, I should say, okay, Canadian. I should have had that. MIT LGO still goes to that M7 bucket. Canadian, NUS, okay, that's good to know. Pakistani B schools, all right. Schulich, okay, so Canadian and primarily Canadian and Singapore. Perfect. That's good. Thank you guys. It was very, very helpful. Asian School of Management in Manila. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna actually hide this poll over here. I'm gonna hide that as well. So I get the idea. I conducted this poll for the first time, so now I know how to make it better. Thank you for those insights. That's when we share information, we help each one of us do better. Okay, so before I start this session, we have a couple of upcoming sessions. We have a geometry webinar that is tomorrow. So this is in this webinar we focus on data sufficiency pertaining to quadrilaterals. Very focused webinar. We start from actually solving a few 700 level questions, which most of you will not. If you're attending the session, you won't be able to solve them. And then we kind of build that foundation, and towards the end, we target the same 700 level questions. And then when you do that, because you have that solid foundation, you then end up doing much better on those questions. So again, very focused webinar, quadrilaterals, data sufficiency, geometry. Quadrilaterals, data sufficiency gets you geometry. So geometry is redundant there. So GMAT geometry is an area of concern for you. If there's something where you want to improve on, definitely join that. This is again hosted by Payal, who is the head of curriculum at eGMAT. She's my co-founder, and then next week we have a sentence correction webinar. In this webinar, we talk about the meaning-based approach that eGMAT invented a decade back, and we're in the third iteration of that approach. You may have heard of this approach. You may have seen other people practice this approach. You would not have seen anyone practice the way we do. Shraddha and Stacy would be hosting this webinar. Again, for those of you who need help in SC, this will provide an excellent foundation for you to then build upon. All right. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. Okay, and the screen should have changed for you. Now, before I start with this webinar, I want to kind of ask you guys, you guys are here in this webinar, the title said, how do you score 760 on the GMAT? What expectations do you have from this webinar? I mean, what would make it worth your while? And if again, remember, reasonable expectations. Don't tell me that, hey, if after this webinar I take a mock test and I end up scoring 730, that's what I'm looking for. That's not reasonable. But what reasonable expectations do you have from this webinar? If you can put your answers in that short answer pod, that'd be wonderful. Best practices, okay. How to get good material by eGMAT. You don't even need to attend the webinar. Okay, how to act on your weakness. Get an idea on how to plan my studies. A strategy to convert weak sections to a mediocre or a strong one. Good. Those are good questions. Get a proper outline to preparation. Wonderful. Time management. Great. Schedule for a successful journey. Skipping strategy, unless and until you're right towards the end. That's probably a question that you should ask towards the end, but okay, I'm going to address that as well. Good. Secrets on what top scorers do differently. Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay. Excellent. Let's see. Are there any other questions that are there? Study plan focus area, 1 month prep strategy. Okay. I'm going to give you a prep strategy. I don't know if it's 1 month's enough for you. Depends on what your scores are. But you'll have an idea after this webinar whether 1 month's enough time for you. Okay. All right. That's wonderful. Understand what are the pitfalls for me. Okay. That is really good. Let's, I'm going to actually clear this. These are, what are the best books for topic-wise question bank? We don't like books. Let me just tell you that right away. So you are not going to get an answer to that. But 90% of the questions that you have over here, you'll get really good answers to them. And importance of IR and essay. I'm going to say, or AWA. Let's kind of hold this question for the end. I'm not going to answer this question. This is purely about the quant and verbal sections, but I'll be happy to address that question towards the end. And yes, I'll be sharing the recording as well. Okay. So with that, let's talk about this. Pradeep says, why don't you conduct live sessions of basics on quant and verbal? Because essentially, live sessions don't do justice to teaching basics. They're not personalized enough. We've done that. Pradeep's question, but our AI-driven modules do a way better job when it comes to ability improvement. Okay, so with that, let's kind of go over there. I'm going to start. I've divided this entire session into 3 big chunks over here, and I'm going to talk about what those three big chunks are. I'm actually reread portion of this session, so I didn't have time to build an agenda slide. So I'm going to put that first part over here, which is, hey, what does the GMAT actually test? Why? Because when many of you think about the GMAT, you guys think about time management, you guys think about skipping strategies, you guys think about practice questions, you guys think about accuracy. We're going to talk about what does the GMAT actually test, and this is going to be for about 20-25 minutes or so. At the end of these 25 minutes, which is agenda item number 1, what you should have is clarity as to what works and what doesn't work on the GMAT at a very high level. Not the specifics in quant and verbal, but at a very high level. You should have good clarity. Okay. Now that's going to be our foundation. Using that foundation, we're going to go and build a GMAT study plan. I'm going to show you 2 case studies, and I'm going to really outline how their study plans differ, how their study plans in some ways are similar, and why is it that that you need that personalized study plan for yourself. If you're an eGMAT student, this will clarify a lot of questions that you have towards about your own personalized study plan. And if some of those questions, if you still have questions, I'd be happy to answer those. If I can't answer those in this webinar, then we have an onboarding session next week where you can answer those questions. And then the third piece is going to be, okay, how do you study efficiently? What's that path to excellence? What does it take? What metrics should you measure during that time? What indications should you, what would indicate that you're not doing well? I'm going to try and keep this very generic, part number 3, but there will be specifics because this session partly is for eGMAT students, so that you'd see metrics across the eGMAT platform that I'm going to talk about. But if you're using another platform that provides, a reasonable amount of data-driven feedback, you should be able to apply the same principles there as well. Okay, so with that, let's start from the very basics, which is what does the GMAT actually test? And one thing that I want you to take away with regards to this is that when it comes to acing the GMAT, there are no tricks that would work. It's about building ability, and ability in the context of the GMAT is it's not just a qualitative notion, it's a very quantitative notion in the sense that there's a measurement for ability. A GMAT score is a percentile score, and which by itself is a measurement of ability. So acing the GMAT is about having solid abilities in both quant and verbal, and even within quant and verbal within the various subsections over there. And the reason I want to really talk about is because when people start studying for the GMAT, they start worrying about these things at the bottom. Can I solve questions in the required amount of time? What section am I going to attempt first, quant or verbal, AW or IR? Which questions am I going to skip? When am I going to skip those questions? Can I sit through a 3 or 6 minute test or so? Now, these things are important, but they're only important once you have ability. If you don't have ability, all of these things have no meaning in the context of an exam such as the GMAT. Okay. Now, what is ability? Let's just start from the very basics over here. So when you think about ability, I want to also use another term, accuracy. Accuracy is something that we all understand. You take a 10-question quiz, you get 8 out of those 10 correct, your accuracy is 80%. Now, accuracy is an absolute measure, which means when you say my accuracy is 80%, I have no idea as to how do you stand compared to others. Because if on that quiz, if 200 people take that quiz, and if 100 of them actually get 8 out of 10 correct, then even though you have 80% accuracy, your ability is probably 50% or lower. On the other hand, ability is a comparative metric. You may take a quiz, a 10-question quiz, you may get 7 out of those 10 correct. Your ability might be 90th percentile, which means of all the people who've taken that quiz, you are in the top 10% of students. Okay, so ability in the context of the GMAT is a much more precise measure. Accuracy, not so great a measure. Okay, and to really illustrate my point, I'm going to really talk about a simplified version of an adaptive test algorithm. This is something that we've been talking about for the past 3 to 4 years. You might have seen others talk about this now. So what I have over here is a simple chart over here. On the y-axis, what we have is a difficulty level of question. The higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. The lower you go on y-axis, the easier a question becomes. And then on the x-axis, we have question number progression. So student one or case one, we're going to simulate two students where the graph's pre-simulated, so you can probably see where I'm going. So gets the first question. And for simplification, I've just assumed that the first question is a medium difficulty level, which it usually is. Okay, student one gets the first question correct. Okay, the second question accordingly is slightly more challenging. I mean, that's how a computer adaptive test in principle works. You solve an easier problem or a certain difficulty problem. If you do it correctly, you get a more challenging problem, because the test is trying to figure out where your threshold is, what your ability is, that is. He gets that correct as well. He gets another question that's even more challenging. And you can see that as you're going from question number 1 to 3 for case 1, we are going higher on the y-axis, which means questions are becoming more and more difficult. Okay, he gets that question wrong. As a result, the fourth question is of a difficulty level between question number 3 and 2. And if you can do that, if you draw horizontal lines from here and here, you can see the fourth question is there. Now, they're not precisely straight, but I think you get the point. He gets the fourth question right, which is slightly easier. He gets the fifth question more challenging. He gets that wrong. Okay. Then let's so we're going to just stop worrying about student one over here, because we want to start with student two or case two. Case two gets the first question, which gets it wrong, gets a second question, which is easier. Then gets a third question, which is slightly more, he gets that second question right. As a result, he gets a third question, which is slightly more challenging. He makes a mistake over there. Then gets the fourth question, which is easier. He gets it right. And then he gets the fifth question right as well, which is slightly more challenging. Now, at the end of question number 5, if I were to end the test and if I were to ask you who is doing better, who would you say, student 1 or student 2? And I'm going to put in a poll question here in about 5 seconds. Who is doing better, student 1 or student 2? What would you say? All right, let's get a few more responses. 5. I have 160 students. I only have about 75 odd responses here. Who is doing better? If I were to end the test over here, there's no sixth question. Who is doing better? 82. Come on, put a stake in the ground. You have nothing to lose. Whether you get it right, it'll be it'll tell you that you're thinking in the right direction. It will be a reinforcement. If you get it wrong, you'll learn something. So, all right, about 100 responses now. That's good. Let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results, and 80% of you said student 1's doing better. 20% of you said student 2 is doing better. I'm going to first ask folks who said student 2 is doing better. Why do you think student 2 is doing better? What is your logic behind that? What is your reasoning behind that? Okay, student 2 is improving. What else? Let's get a few more. Up move, I understand that. The curve eventually went up. No, it hasn't. It's still here. This guy's here. Got the same number of right answers. Yes, accuracy is identical. Absolutely. Okay, got it. I get those answers. For those of you who says student 1 is doing better, why do you think student 1 is doing better? 80% of you says student 1 is doing better. So let's get that. More hard questions answered. Got off to a good start. Okay. The graph is going up with every answer. Well, it's stabilized for the last 2 or 3 questions, but it is stabilized. Dealing with harder questions, started answering more difficult questions. Yes. Okay. That's good. Good answers. I mean, both sides, I would say reasonable answers. The correct answer is, of course, student 1 is doing better because of what's being said on the screen, which is he's answered more challenging questions correctly. Okay, let me ask a yes/no question before I kind of give you a parallel which will help you answer pretty much any question about the GMAT. How many of you think the GMAT scoring algorithm is complex? Yes versus no. How many of you think the GMAT scoring algorithm is complex? It's like a secret sauce and blah 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 blah. Okay, that's 80% of you think it's complex. Okay, and I understand that because there's a lot of debate that's out there. Thank you. So let me just say this, as someone who's been a former algorithm designer, the GMAT scoring algorithm actually is a fairly, I don't want to kind of call it rudimentary algorithm. It's not rudimentary, but when it comes to it being world class, it's probably 2 generations behind what a world class algorithm is. It doesn't make it wrong, by the way. It's just that I'm just trying to tell you it's not super complex, and which is why the parallel that I'm going to share with you works very well. Has anyone hired people over here? Have you seen the algorithm? No. I have researched the algorithm a lot, and I've seen the fundamental principles on which the algorithm is built. So has anyone hired people here? Yes. Okay. Good. Lots of people have hired people. The GMAT algorithm works very similar to how a thought process when it comes to hiring a senior level person works. Let's say you want to hire someone who for a director level position, and a director level is, I mean, you think about this in a company. Typically, you join as a starting person. I'm going to talk about a very basic hierarchy. You join in a junior level position, you become a senior, you become a manager, then you become a senior manager, then you become a director, senior director, vice president, senior vice president, and then you go into the C-level positions or so. So if you were to look at this, you want to hire a director level, so which is kind of a reasonably senior but not super senior position. So the GMAT actually starts in that very similar position over here, where you says, okay, I'm going to figure out when you hire a director level person, when you want to hire someone who's director level, what's the first question you're going to ask? The first question you're going to ask is essentially, hey, is a question which is pertaining to what a director level person should be able to answer properly, right? Let's say you want to hire a marketing director. You'll ask questions about, how have you run campaigns? How did you optimize campaigns? If you were to hire a technical director, you will ask questions about the projects. How did he or she make sure that the goals are aligned? Now, if that person can't answer that question, what's your reaction going to be? You're the hiring manager. You ask the question which is appropriate for a director level person. And the person can't answer this. You're going to ask a easier question, which is kind of what this works. You might really say he's not the right fit, but remember you have that hour over there. But you'd say, okay, I'm going to answer an easier question. There is a possibility that the guy might be nervous. Let's make him more comfortable. Let's ask him easier questions, which is what the GMAT does. Okay, and then you ask the easier question. If the person still doesn't answer that, you kind of ask another easy question before you finally make that judgment that the candidate is no good, and so on and so forth. That's how we as humans act, and that's how the GMAT acts as well, except the fact that we as humans, we have the possibility to finish that interview in 15 minutes. The GMAT has to give the test till it figures out, are you a junior level position? Are you, a senior level position? Are you a director position? Are you a vice president or a senior vice president or a CEO kind of stuff? As humans, we behave that way, right? And that's how the GMAT works as well. So the algorithm is a very logical algorithm in this case. And that's kind of where the difficulty level of questions served to you depends on how you act upon it. At a very high level, does that make sense? I'm going to actually provide a lot more data to add to do that, but does that make sense? Right? Yes. A few more yeses, please. Okay. Now remember this parallel, and I'm going to ask you, does answering the first 2 questions right is too much critical? We'll answer that question. So hold on to that question. It's an important question, I know. But hold on to this parallel, hold on to this first few questions doubt that you have. And in about 10 minutes, I'm going to ask this question back. Okay. So let's go back over here. Student, I think we've done student 2, who's doing better. We've done that. Both of them have identical accuracy. In this case, student 1 is doing better. Why? Because the data that you have till question number 5 is he can answer more director level questions correctly. So it's more appropriate for that director, maybe even a slightly senior position. That median difficulty level is that director level line. And student 2, on the other hand, is kind of getting to that director level, but it's not proven that he's as good as student 1. So on a comparative basis, because remember, the GMAT is a comparative test, that's why it gives you an ability score. Student 1 is doing better. Okay. In pure terms, on the GMAT, student 1 got 5 questions. Each one of those questions were either at or above the average difficulty level. Student 2 got only the first question, which was at the average difficulty level. Other than that, all the questions that were served to student 2 were not even at the average difficulty level. Or in other words, the test won't even serve you difficult questions if you don't prove to the test that you have the ability to answer difficult questions. Very similar to how you would do in an interview, by the way. Does that make sense? Right. Now, is there any timing on this chart? Is there any timing on this chart? No, there isn't any timing. And for that one person who feels his time has been wasted, you can leave. I mean, there are others who find it useful, and there's no one forcing you to do that. So coming back to this, there is no timing on this chart over here. And the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of you think about timing as very, very critical to the GMAT. It is, but at a very, very later stage. If you have ability, timing starts to be critical. If you don't have ability, you won't even get difficult questions. Okay. So if you want to ace the GMAT, you have 2 challenges that you need to overcome. The first is to make sure that the test serves difficult questions to you. Okay. The second is you've got to have the ability to answer them correctly. And if you think about it, they're essentially one challenge itself. Why? Because unless and until you answer difficult questions correctly, there won't be any more difficult questions served to you. Yes. And the session is being recorded, so you will get the recording. Don't worry about it. Minac says, should you spend a little extra time on the first few questions? Minac, I'm going to answer that question too. Just hold on to this. So coming back to this, the takeaway, write this down, is your GMAT score is governed by ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Okay. Now this was just a generic idea of how a computer adaptive test works. Now I'm going to show real GMAT data to back that claim. Every claim that we make, we'll back it with data. That's something that we do at eGMAT. If we can't back that claim with data, we won't actually even worry about it. Okay. Now this is, what you see is a screenshot of the GMAT prep test. The GMAT prep was a testing engine that the GMAC provided prior to middle of 2018 or May of 2018. And it gave excellent insights about how the GMAT works. So those of you who are asking, have you studied the algorithm? Yes, I've studied it. And this has been one of the primary sources. The current GMAT still uses the same algorithm. In fact, the GMAT algorithm hasn't changed since 2010, which is when, or 2008 to be very precise, which is when the current GMAC took over the testing from ETS. Okay. Prior to that, ETS, the organization that conducts the GRE, they were the ones who released the official guide. OG9 was released by then. OG10 actually was released by them. OG11 is when the GMAC did that. Is the algorithm same for online and offline tests? According to the GMAC, it's the same. According to my studies, it's about 95% the same. Okay. Again, as I said, it's not a super sophisticated algorithm, so you can get to the same approximation using many versions of that algorithm. So again, 95% same, which is I think good enough for you guys over here. Now, what you see over here are attempts of 2 different students, and the red rectangles that you see, those are the question numbers where the student made mistakes. Now, if you compare these 2 students, what you're going to find is between question numbers 11 and 41, these students, their attempts seem very similar. They've made 9 mistakes between 11 and 41. The mistakes are more or less evenly spaced. The only difference, which is over here, is that this guy made 2 additional mistakes in the first 2 questions. And if you were to purely look at an accuracy metric over here, you would say, man, their scores should be very similar. Okay. However, this is not the case. The guy on the left, student 1, who we call, got a V43. This is the verbal section. In 2018, the verbal section had 41 questions, which is why you see 41 rectangles here. V43 is 97 percentile on the GMAT. Or in other words, if you translate that percentile, what the test told him was, Hey, my friend, you are among the top 6,000 test takers in the world. V32 is 65th percentile, which is, translates to a 70,000 rank, given the fact that 200,000 people, give or take, attempt the GMAT every year. Now, some of you may be thinking, let me ask this. Is the GMAT harsh? Let me just put in a yes no poll, and I'm going to clear all answers of my previous. Yeah. Is the GMAT harsh when you look at this data? I'm going to actually remove broadcast results. My bad. I'm sorry. Yes, no, yes, no. Come on. And Aman is an excellent question. Okay, I have just 50 responses. I have 150 students here. Is the GMAT harsh based on that data? Come on, guys, put a stake in the ground. Be decisive. No one's judging you here. I'm not calling your names out. Is the GMAT harsh? Yes, no. If you say I don't know, then kind of put a stake. What are you leaning towards? Because you'll only learn from this. 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. And I have almost a split jury here. 53% of you say it's harsh. 47% of you say it's not harsh. The correct answer is the GMAT's actually not harsh at all. It's a very balanced test. Okay. The thing that is there is, let's kind of map student 2 on this adaptive algorithm that we did. Student 2, remember, got the first question, median difficulty question, wrong. And Aman, I still have your question, so hold on to this. I'm going to answer that question. So Aman has an excellent question. So he got the first question, median difficulty, wrong. Then the test served him a 30 percentile question, which means 70% of the people actually answer that question correctly. He got that wrong as well. Now, if you were that interviewer and the interviewee answered an average difficulty question wrong and an easy question wrong, what would you think to be asking as the next question? 50 percentile question wrong, 30 percentile question wrong. What at this point is not a fit, or it's, let me send an even easier question. So the third question that this guy got was a 15th percentile question. He got that right. Then he got a 20th percentile question, got that right. 30th percentile question, got that right. 40th percentile question, got that right. He continued to get these questions right till he reached an 80th percentile question, which is when he started to make mistakes again. Now, student 1, on the other hand, 50th percentile, got that right. 70th percentile, got that right. 80th percentile, got that right. 90th percentile, got that right, and continued to answer questions correctly over there. Okay. So clearly, the test was very, very smart, was very reasonable when it says, okay, at this point, the guy has answered a reasonable number of 90th percentile questions. Even if he make mistakes over here, I know his ability is there. Okay. Now, the reason why the scores are very different is because of the nature of questions, not just the accuracy. In fact, one of the reasons why I say that the GMAT's a very reasonable test is this guy made 9 mistakes out of 41 questions, still got a 97th percentile. Why? I mean, can you think of another test where you do almost a quarter of questions incorrectly and be among the top 3 percentile students? Can you think of another test? Not really. There are very few tests that would do that. Okay. So the GMAT actually is very forgiving, by the way, overall, as long as you make mistakes on difficult questions. Now, you guys look at this and you see accuracies. What the GMAT looks at is ability. So the 97th percentile guy on the verbal section had these 3 abilities: 95th percentile ability in SC and CR, and then 87th percentile in RC, and the 65th percentile guy had these abilities. Now, when you look at these 2 students through the lens of ability And these are actual metrics. Do they look very different? Do they look different? Yes. So, and the ability is a numerical metric on the GMAT. You see this metric. Where do you see this metric? Does anyone know? Where do you see these ability scores? On your enhanced score report. Yes, if you take an in-center GMAT and you page the GMAC $30, they will give you your ability scores. And these are the ability scores over there. So this is kind of proof that GMAT is a test of ability. It measures your ability score. In fact, we took over 1,000 score reports, ESRs that is, and we kind of extracted these ability scores and ran a regression test. And the regression equation could predict the GMAT score with 99.95% accuracy. So the R square, for those of you who know what regression is, was 99.95. How good is 99.95% R square in a regression equation? Amazing, yes. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Close to perfect, yes. That's how precise that ability score is. So when you say you have 95th percentile ability, what the GMAT's saying is, of all the test takers who are taking the test, you are among the top 5% of students. Okay. Over here, this guy, of all the test takers who have taken the test, this guy is among the top 66%, or there are 34% students who are as good or better than him. Okay, now let's get to Aman's question. This is, but how accurate is the algorithm? Does it consider factors such as stress built over months of preparation, physical atmosphere, and the more pressure on the exam day? The answer is no, it doesn't. Okay, and it shouldn't, to be very frank. Why? Because remember this, what are the hallmarks of a 90th percentile guy? That you can perform under pressure. That's kind of who a 90th percentile person is, right? It's the same way as when you go and play a soccer match. You may be really good in practice, but if you can't perform in the match, you're not a good player. You're not paid as high. The reason why Messi and Ronaldo get paid so much is because they perform so well in the match environment. On the other hand, similarly, the reason why Kohli gets paid so much is because, not recently, but he usually performs really well in the match environment. That's the same way the GMAT works. The world works that way. Okay. Aman, does that help answer your question? Okay. Does the eGMAT platform track the difficulty percentiles of each question? What do you think? Any eGMAT student over here? Yes, what do you think of that question? It does. We do. We track way more than that. Okay. If you go to our YouTube channel, there's a video that I created about a year back, which is, hey, how do we figure out how difficult a certain question is? You can actually just ping me up later on. I'll be happy to share that video with you. Okay. So with that, if GMAT tests ability, what ability scores does the GMAT test? So on the quant side, you have two ability scores, algebra, geometry, and arithmetic. On the verbal side, you have three ability scores, SC, CR, and RC. Now here are some attributes over there. First of all, each of these ability scores is an independent score, which means how you do in SC has no bearing to your ability score in CR. You might score a 0 percentile in SC and you can score a 97 percentile in CR. That's absolutely possible. Okay, that's really important. The second thing is, a lot of people think, hey, RC has greater weight than SC. SC has greater weight than CR. No, every subsection has identical weights. On the verbal side, each subsection has about a third of the weight. That's one of the other things that that regression equation told us, which is that when we did that, SC, CR, and RC had equal weights to the second order of magnitude. Okay, so it was like 0.3222 and 0.33 something or something. So very, very identical. And I'm sure if we actually added another 1,000 data points, they would gravitate towards them being nearly identical. Similarly, on the quant side, algebra, geometry, and arithmetic, identical weight. They're all 50%. Okay. The other thing which it means is point number 3 can be derived from 1 and 2 is that you need a target ability in each subsection. So there are many ways to get a 730, for example, and each one of you, depending on your natural strengths and weaknesses, has a sweet way to get to that score of 730. Very, very similar to think of yourself or if I were to draw a parallel as a business or a conglomerate with multiple businesses. If you want to hit a certain profitability, there are multiple ways you can achieve that. And your job with regards to building that study plan is, how do you find the most optimal way, the way which would lead to A, least effort, and B, highest probability of success. And the point number 4 and 5 are really important, which is that the process, the steps that you take to build ability in each subsection is identical. The kind of learning, some of you were really saying, does the quant work the same way? Yes, the quant section works the entire same way. Not only that, within quant, within arithmetic, for example, in number properties, how do you go from a 20th percentile ability to an 80th percentile ability is the same set of steps, not the same content, but the same set of steps that you as you would take to go from a 20th percentile in word problems or geometry to an 80th percentile in word problems or geometry. Okay. And then the last piece I think is really important, which is why each one of you needs that personalized study plan, is that your starting subsectional ability is likely to be different for each subsection. That's really important overall. Each one of you has natural strengths or weaknesses, and in fact, some of you actually know this. How many of you, in over here, can you type down your strengths and weaknesses over here? So if you know them already, out of the 5 subsections, just say strengths this, weaknesses this. Weakness SC, okay, and you can call it, yeah, SC is a weakness, all right. Strengths, quant, arithmetic, perfect. And for those of you who don't know their precise starting ability, you can actually attempt a sigma x mock. We offer a sigma x mock which allows you to really, which gives you your starting abilities, numerical values of these starting abilities. Okay, Aman says, I completely get that. It's kind of harsh, but in a tricky manner, it's how it works. Someone like me who has worked a lot but still fails to perform on the day, it gets difficult to get rational with yourself because you put in months of work to see that low score. Okay, I can't help but make my preparation stronger to ensure that I'm up to mark. So Aman, I somewhat agree with you. And what Aman is really saying is, hey, I go to the test, I fail to perform. I think the problem really is with many of us, not all of us, with many of us, we consider the GMAT to be like the purpose of life. How many of you do that? I say, man, my life would be a failure if I don't do well on the GMAT. And the moment you get onto that test, the moment you see that first question, you kind of start sweating. Those fear of failure that comes in partially, yes. Don't do that. It's just a test. This is not rocket science. And again, remember this. I'm trying to sell a course to you in many ways, right? I am saying that it's just a test. If you consider it to be more than a test, if you consider it to have power over you, you will get stressed. On the other hand, if you've delivered metrics during your practice and you consider that test to be just another practice, you're going to excel on it. Okay. So it's you who has to actually understand that piece overall. And if you need to go in through some therapy, you should do that. But frankly, which is why on the eGMAT platform, we care about metrics on the platform, because we know if you deliver on the metrics, you're going to do well on the test. The test is going to be a very, very similar outcome. And which is why we have the LMP program in there, which is the last mile push. We kind of, part of that is also we kind of tell you those things over there. Bharat says, I have a 710 in an official mock. Do I lack ability or something else? Bharat, I can't really say. Frankly, given the fact that official questions are out there, I don't trust official mocks just because those numbers are not there. If you say, hey, I have these ability scores within my eGMAT within the eGMAT platform, and this is what I have on Sigma X mocks, I can tell you a lot more. Official mocks, I've just learned so much. Okay. All right. So the next question that I want to ask you is, what are these ability scores? Ask yourself overall. Okay. And And if that guy has a 660 on sigma x, then you have the actual GMAT 650 and 660 very, very similar. So the sigma x mock tells you where. I don't know. I have to look at the subsectional abilities to really figure that out. So again, if you write to us, we can look at that mock and it tells you where your strengths are. And in fact, I'm going to take a case study which is going to be very similar to, it's going to be a 670 case study on a sigma x mock. You can see that study plan and see if that resonates with you. It might not, but if you write to us, we can definitely give you a precise answer. Okay. Next question. If you've not studied for 7 to 8 years, is it good to take a sigma x mock? So I would say solve 20 questions in quant, 20 questions in verbal, get used to the format, and then take a sigma x mock. No more than that. Okay. So we've talked about this. The other thing I said, on the GMAT, you can make mistakes. All right. Here's a guy who scored a 90th percentile. He improved from a V17, okay, to a V40, and my marker supposedly has stopped working. So I'm going to do this. He improved from a V17 to a V40. And what you can see over here, what I'm going to show is that this guy actually made mistakes. All right. This is how his attempt went from. In the first set of questions, because the questions are medium, a lot of people would read this and say, hey, he got the first 10 questions right, I have to do that. No, he got the first 10 right because those questions weren't as challenging. They didn't push his ability. They were easy for him because he was a 90th percentile student. The next set of questions became a bit more challenging. He actually made a few more mistakes. The third and the fourth set of questions were very, very challenging, and which is where he got half the questions wrong, yet he was able to get a V40. V40 means he scored a 91st percentile. And to answer that question, what does a V30, V40 mean? It's a scoring scale, and you could. I like the percentile translations of these because they have a meaning. V30 is I think a 55th percentile, and V40 is a 91st percentile or so. Okay, I'm not going to explain the whole scoring system. Just focus on the percentile. I mean, if you focus on the percentile, everything else would make sense. 760 is 99 percentile. That 99 percentile is composed of percentiles in quant and verbal. It's as simple as that. Okay. So it's just what the GMAT has done is they've translated the percentile scores into scores out of 60. It's just a mapping system. Should you worry about the scores out of 60 if you understand the scores out of 100 or percentile? No, you shouldn't. It's one and the same. There's 1:1 mapping over here. But again, bottom line, you can make mistakes as long as you make them on hard questions. The GMAT is very forgiving if you make mistakes on hard questions. Okay. Now, let's answer those questions. Do the first 10 questions matter? Should you approach them any differently? And should you spend more time on the first 10 questions? What do you think are the answers to these 3 questions? Yes, no. You can say YYN, YNN, NNN, just to really just say. No, in a single line, YNN. Don't go to SC yet. Okay, YYY, YYN. Let's look at this. YNN, YNN. Heck, yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yes, no, yes. These are the 3 questions. Do the first 10 questions matter? They're on the slide. Should you approach them differently? Should you spend more time? 2 and 3 are kind of similar. 3 is basically one version of how you would approach them differently. Okay, the correct answer to this, as someone who studied the algorithm, is YNN. Do the first 10 matter? Yes. Should you approach them any differently? No. Why? Because it won't make any difference. And should you spend more time? Absolutely not. And let me explain this with some background. Remember, what have we been saying? What is the GMAT a test of? GMAT is a test of ability. Yes. Take that and let's apply that over here. Okay. Now, let's say you're the student called Melissa. Okay. Melissa's ability is 90th percentile. If you're an eGMAT student, you understand what this translates to in terms of accuracy for different various difficulty level questions. If you're a 90th percentile student, your accuracy on medium questions is 90%. Okay. Your accuracy on medium hard is 80%, and your accuracy on hard is about 60 to 65%, which means as Melissa, you're still going to make mistakes on hard questions despite being a 90th percentile student. You're expected to do that. Okay. Now, remember the interview example I said? Remember that? The GMAT's like hiring someone. If you ask someone a super hard question and that person is not able to answer that correctly, what would your inference be? You won't really hold judgment. It's a super hard question. You expected the guy to kind of get it wrong anyway. Right? The problem is the medium question. It was too difficult. Yes, that's the same thing with hard over here. Now, let's look at this data once again. If you, in the first 10 questions, if you get a medium question, are you likely to answer it incorrectly given who you are? No, that's who you are, right? Now, what happens when we treat things differently? When you spend more time on a medium question, what happens when you don't treat a medium question a medium question? When you go, you do overcorrection. Not just, and you lose time on hard questions, of course, but you do overcorrection. This 90% metric no longer applies. How many of you kind of solved a question and you said, man, let me go check my answer, and then in the process of checking your answer, mark the incorrect answer choice? Yes, that's what we do. That's when the 90% accuracy doesn't make. Okay. So do the first 10 questions matter? Yes. But the fact really is, if you're a 90th percentile student, you're not going to make a mistake on them anyway. That's the very definition of 90th percentile. Messi is not going to miss an open goal. That's why he is Messi. Right? Kohli is not likely to miss a full toss. Especially one that's not swinging, that is. I mean, that's the definition of who you are. If you are a 90th percentile guy before going into the test, the first 10 questions will not matter for you. Okay. On the other hand, if in the unlikely event you get a difficult question in the first 10 and you get it wrong, the test is not going to hold judgment on you against that. Because that's how the test is designed to be. Yes, which is why I really say the GMAT is a test of ability. All of these things don't matter. Okay. Here's one of our former students, Magdalena. All right. She scored 780. She had a V48. She made mistakes. She made mistakes on the GMAT. This guy I interviewed yesterday, he made mistakes on the GMAT. He had a V47. Okay. And you can watch their interviews. If you look at their e-GMAT stats, you would see the same mistakes, but those mistakes were on difficult questions. Okay. And that's very, very important. Unfortunately, those scores can't be passed, but yes. So, I mean, if you want to watch their success stories, this is number 6, this is number 7. If you want to download that ESR that I shared for the 710 guy, you can actually download it from number 5 is that ESR, so you can click on that. But bottom line is, all of us make mistakes. Some of them actually made mistakes even in the first 10, but those questions that they made mistakes on were difficult, and that's okay to make mistakes on that. So it's more important to get easy and medium questions correct than hard questions. Yes, it is important to get there, but bottom line is, again, the takeaway that I want you to have is, don't worry about the test. Prior to the test, hit the metrics so that you become a 90th percentile student. Okay, that's important. A lot of people focus a lot on the test. It's not about the test, it's about the preparation for the test. Does that make sense? The test just has to be an exercise. Okay, you lose the battle before you go into the test center, not in the test center. Yes, learn to perform. Okay, Focus on building ability, approach all questions how you do in practice. Don't do them any differently. Okay. Now, let's go to this thing. That the fact that you need a target ability for each subsection. All right. So this is where we go into the study plan piece overall. Okay. So what does a study plan do? And then I'm going to go into the last question. How do you build ability? That's going to be after another 15 minutes. We're going to do that. What does a study plan do? What's the role of a study plan? What's the job of a study plan? Okay. Guide you to do what? Optimizes your effort investment. All right. Time management. Okay. Brings discipline. It does do that. Yes. Helps you create momentum for your preparation. Yes. Makes you focus on weaker sections. Actually, it should make you focus appropriately on both. Gives you a clear roadmap to preparation. Perfect. Yes. To study efficiently. Good. Really good responses. And this is where wisdom of a group actually helps all of us become better. At eGMAT, we help you build study plans to actually answer these questions. How will I reach my target GMAT score? You know, what's that path to reaching my target GMAT score? What ability scores do I need to get in quant and verbal or in SCCR and RC for me to get to my target GMAT score? Then once you have those ability scores defined, how much time do I need to achieve those ability scores? Once you have that time defined, then the third question is, you know, what am I going to do with that time? Am I going to practice questions? I'm going to focus on learning. What portion of that time is going to be focused on learning versus practicing questions? And what metrics am I going to measure? Okay, these are the three questions that essentially that a study plan answers. And I'm going to show you examples as to how we answer these questions. Before that, Karan has a question. He says, on an average, after how many questions will the difficulty level increase? Okay, so what he's saying is on a computer adaptive test, how many questions, you know, do I need to solve before a difficulty level changes? What do you guys think? Think about all that we have talked about today. 3 to 4, okay. 1, okay. 2, after each question, 7 to 8. You're not thinking, you're just putting numbers. It depends on person to person. Why should it depend on person to person? Why should it depend on person to person? Yes, it depends on the right or wrong answer. I mean, think about the interview example I gave you. If you were interviewing, the guy answered 3 medium difficult questions correctly. Would you ask another medium difficult question? No. Right? On the other hand, if you gave him 3 questions, he answered 1 correctly and 2 incorrectly, you're going to probably reduce the difficulty. If he answered 2 correctly and 1 incorrectly, you're going to probably answer another question as well. You're going to ask another medium difficulty question to really confirm overall. So essentially, when does the difficulty level change or when does the ability estimate change depends on when the test has determined with reasonable probability that your ability is higher or lower than this. Okay. If the test can determine with reasonable probability, okay, this guy definitely needs to be served difficult questions because I know these questions are a piece of cake for him, you know, that's when it will increase that difficulty level. On the other hand, if it really says, okay, I can't really figure out, you know, if he's in the difficulty range or lower difficulty range, then it's going to try and serve similar difficulty questions. If the test says, I can estimate with very high certainty that, you know, he needs to be served easier questions because he can't answer such questions, then the test will serve you easier questions. Does that make sense, Karan? No, the time to answer questions does not solve. Okay. All right, so let's kind of go into the study plan piece over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 students, Ayush and Rafaela, And these are two students who are starting at two very different scores. So Ayush has a starting score of 670. Rafaela has a starting score of 600. Ayush actually took the GMAT twice before these are both real case studies. They're both on our YouTube channel, by the way, in addition to another, I think 194 case studies or so. And Ayush had taken the GMAT twice. He was actually rejected by Columbia and Ross when he came to us. Rafaela, I think, had taken the Sigma X mock, and this score is from a Sigma X mock or so. Okay, so within the eGMAT platform, you can actually build that score in your study plan in 3 steps or so. The first thing is you determine your starting abilities. So Rafaela actually improved from 600 to 730. You can see how she improved. You can see a starting split breakup of 600 score, a Q36 and a V36, and she finally ended up getting a Q48 and a V41. She is currently studying at Harvard. So the first thing, get your starting abilities. And when you get your starting abilities, these were Rafaela's abilities. Now, what are your observations from here? These are ability scores in percentile. Read this and tell me your observations. Strong SC and CR, good. What else? Weak in arithmetic and algebra geometry and RC, right? It's not rocket science to figure that out once you have these scores. Algebra is not super strong either. 49 percentile is not great too. Okay. So that's good. Remember this over here. So then what you do is you put this in the PSP and you really say my target score is 730. It generates those target milestones. You can really see she has to now go from that lower score in RC to 85th percentile. Similarly, you can see the arithmetic and algebra geometry percentiles change. Then the third thing that it does is that it then generates how much time you need to go from your starting abilities, which you see on the left over here, to the target abilities. And these are time estimates based on how much diligent effort you said you're going to put it every day. Okay, so on the left are the starting abilities, on the right are the target abilities, and here you can see the time that's needed. For example, over here in RC, she needed about 2.4 weeks of 100% effort based on what she said. She said about 2.5 hours per day on the weekday and about 4 hours per day on the weekend. Similarly, on arithmetic and algebra, you can see that as well. Now, what do you observe about arithmetic and algebra? Can you really see how in arithmetic she is not aiming for as high a score as she is aiming for in algebra because her starting ability is lower? Can you see that optimization over here? Right? On the other hand, on algebra, she's aiming for a much higher ability. Why? Because her innate ability is high. And that's kind of the optimization that you need to really do at your end. And that's what PSP does. It really tries to figure out what is the shortest path to your end goal. She's not trying to be perfect in arithmetic, nor in reading comprehension. She's not aiming for that 97th percentile or so. Okay. So then what the PSP says is, okay, now that we know how much time you need, now we know what your target abilities are, let's kind of figure out where would you be spending this time. Okay. And to do that, within the eGMAT platform, we have what we call as the 3 stages of learning, which is, hey, how do you build ability? The first stage of learning is you learn concepts and application, which are core. For those of you who know about the core eGMAT course, SC, CRRC, number properties or so, that's kind of which we call as stage 1, which is where the concepts and application files are. Then you do stage 2, which is cementing, which is what we call as the master application stage. And then you refine. Once you've cemented successfully, you refine to perfection. Anyone over here who has done cementing in any subsection, SC, CR, number properties, or so on and so forth? Yes. So you guys have been through the process or so, NP, okay? All right. So it is a sequence over here. Okay. So how does your ability improve as you go from one stage to the other? When you learn concepts and application, your ability can improve, up to 50th, 60th percentile. When you master application, your ability improves from 56th to 70th, 80th, or 90th, depending on how well you do cementing. And then when you refine to perfection, that's when you're going to the 95th, 97th percentile or so. How do we do cementing? There are specific expert designed quizzes called cementing quizzes, and they're combined with strategic review, which is our error log process, a proprietary error log process which is very unlike any error log that you guys have seen. Okay, it's a behavioral error log where we tell you why you made mistakes, not just to say I made a modifier mistake, but why did you not spot that modifier error? Which step of the process did you falter on? Okay. Anyone building error logs over here? Using process skills in quant. Oh, all right, good. Okay. So Shakila says, do you focus on one section at a time? Yes, you focus on one section at a time, not for 1 week. If it says 2.5 weeks, for 2.5 weeks. The reason why we do cementing is once you do cementing and you go from one subsection to the other, you will not forget it. On the other hand, if you don't cement successfully and you go from SC to RC, you're going to forget big chunks of SC. I mean, that's kind of the whole process of cementing is, you're building, think of stage one is kind of building a wall where you're putting all the bricks in place. That's learning all the concepts. Cementing is putting a cement around this so that those bricks stay in place. Yes, if you don't do the whole SC section early on well, if your metrics aren't great, you will have to go back. That's the whole point. Just started prep today. I tried SC, got 25th percentile. Any hint on how to improve? Go do the course. There's no hint. If you got 25th percentile, you've got to start with stage one. Your ability is not there to do cementing right now. I mean, you don't even have the bricks on the wall. What are you cementing? First, get the bricks on the wall. How do you cement? Again, if you're an eGMAT student, the answer is there for you. Okay, how do you cement? It's there in the course files. But bottom line is, this is the process of building ability. So shall we do stage one? Yes, absolutely. So you do stage 1 and 2 for your first subsection. Hold on. Let me just mute everything at my end. Do stage 1 and 2 for each subsection. Okay, so do stage 1 and 2 for SC. Then go do stage 1 and 2 for CR or RC. Then do test readiness for CR and SC together. Then go to RC. Do stage 1 and 2. And then do test readiness for all three of them together. Yeah, that way you don't even have to take mocks. You know your ability scores based on that. Aman says, how do we build our ability? That's how you build ability, Aman. If you pass cementing, Scholarinium tells you what your ability scores are going to be. Okay. So remember, these were the ability scores on the left. Over here. Starting abilities, ending abilities. Okay. In this case, I'm going to explain this again. Now, just a legend as to where do you need to put in effort. The tick means, guys, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to send you videos on all of this. If you're talking about how do I do 1, 2, and 3, and they are in the course. If you go to the course dashboard, bottom right hand corner, you see an icon, the bell icon over there, click on it. All of these exist. Okay. So, and let me actually see if I can pull this up. Ask me towards the end. I'm going to give you a list of all the videos that will answer how do you do cementing and so on and so forth. Okay, if you still want it, but they're there on your course page. Okay, now coming back to this, do you guys remember these numbers? Starting abilities, target abilities, and the time to actually attempt questions. Do you guys remember these numbers for a fella? Yes, no? Really important. Okay. Now, let's see how this translates into which portions should she focus on and which portions should she not focus on. So the legend over here is where you have a tick, which means innate ability is there, where you have this dotted circle with orange in between or whatever color this thing is. Then I'm colorblind, so please forgive me around that. Then this means that's what you need to study. And wherever you see this dash, this means you're not required because you're not aiming for that high an ability. So for Rafaela, she already had that ability. in SC and CR. So all she had to do was maintain that ability, which is where she was just doing test readiness. Then she had to start from the very basics. But because she was not aiming for that 95th percentile, that refined to perfection isn't there. In arithmetic, you can really see that she's not refining to perfection, but she's only aiming for that 50th or 55th percentile ability. But in algebra, she's going all the way. So this is your focus map. This tells you where you need to focus your energy on. Okay. So if I'm Rafaela, I'm actually not, but if I were Rafaela, I would not worry about studying the SC and CR courses, which she didn't. I would start with the RC course. How can you see this legend in your plan? You will probably see the legend in this in the PSP overall. So this is something that you'd see. PSP says stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So instead of learn concepts and application, you would really see stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3 over there. So if you, at the end of your PSP, you get a video and then you see the legend over. You see which stage do you need to start with. Okay. This is an enhancement that we're doing to our PSP that you'll see very soon. And this is the internal UI for this. But you still get to know which stage you start with, and that's where you would see that in your PSP. Okay. Does this make sense? The time estimate includes time for stage 1 and stage 2 only. Stage 3 is very short. Stage 1 and stage 2 is what take the most time. All of this is recorded, yes. Okay. Does a cementing score range of 50 to 70 send a red flag? Depends on which cementing quiz it is. Hard cementing doesn't. Medium 50 would send a red flag, yes. And the quiz result screen tells you that. Okay. So let's come back to this. Let's kind of talk about Ayush. All right. So for Ayush, he started at 670. You can see his starting scores. As I said, this guy had taken official mocks. He also took a SigMax mock, and then he ended up scoring a 750. He actually recently graduated from Columbia. Okay. Same process, starting abilities. These were his starting abilities. You can see his SC and CR abilities, and you can see his excellent quant abilities overall. Based on this, PSP told him this is what you need to get to a 750. He wanted to get to a 750 overall. Okay, and based on this, PSP created this study plan for him. Okay, you can see the starting abilities in RC, CR, SC, and in quant over here again on the left. And you can see the target abilities over here, and you can see the time over here. Okay, so then again, the same 3 stages of learning applies to him as well. The stages of learning don't change for anyone or for any subsection. Again, this is the input data point to it. Same legend over here. For him, he had to focus on algebra geometry just to refine to perfection and maintain. But look at how much time he's spending in SC and CR and RC. So for him, quant wasn't the case. RC, he was really good at it. He just needed to master application, and then SC and CR he needed to take longer. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to answer this question, what if the actual time it takes to study is more? Let's kind of worry about that. All right. So let's kind of look at Ayush versus Rafaela. Two people aiming for very, very similar scores, 730, 750, is not super different. Very different starting scores, very different strengths. So for Ayush, he needed about 3 weeks in SC, 3 weeks of dedicated effort, that is, and Rafaela did not need a whole lot of time. Similarly, he needed about 2 weeks in CR. Rafaela did not need a whole lot of time. RC, Rafaela needed way more time. Similarly, arithmetic and algebra as well. Now, when you look at this, do you see that value of personalized study plan and personalizing that learning, not just with regards to what to study, but within each subsection, what not to study? Can you see that precision that this lends itself into? And that's very, very important overall. Okay. Now, let's kind of take this, and that's the other answer to the question when someone asks me, says, how long will it take to finish your course? My answer is, I don't know. And you can really see that for Ayush and Rafaela, these are two very different study plans. They didn't do other parts of the course, by the way. They didn't need to. So for each one of you, the answer with regards to how long will my GMAT prep take depends on what your starting score is. Now let's answer this question. What if the actual time that you take to study is more than the suggested time? What if Ayush kind of figures out, hey, he's not going to get done in 2.7 weeks. He's going to take 3.4 weeks or let's say, 25 days, 26 days. Does that matter? Does that matter? If that number is off by 20%? No. What matters is that you hit the metrics. Okay. These are estimates assuming that you are studying with full dedication. Now, many a times what happens, you study, spend 2 hours, and then during those 2 hours, you kind of watch a YouTube video in between. Does that happen? Yes, no? Yes, no? It does happen, yes. Guilty as charged, yes. I do it, I can tell you that. Sometimes you study for a 2-hour long session and then after that don't think about it. What you studied, you are so stressed, you study for a 2-hour long session and you go into work and don't think about it the entire day. So that, whenever you learn new information, you've got to think about it in your non-studying time, at least a bit, so that that information gets absorbed. Okay. Now, if you don't do that, you will take slightly longer. But that's okay. Why? Because the metrics on the platform will tell you that you are not ready. Okay. The person who said, I actually had to do the entire SC course again because cementing told me, I bet one of two things will have happened for that person. One is either his or her metrics in the SC course wouldn't have been great, or he or she would not have done cementing right after doing the SC course. There would have been a reasonable amount of gap. And am I correct for that person who said I had to redo the SC course and it was totally worth it? Right? The system tells you. That's why we built AI and technology in there, so that when you do this, there is correction built in there. You can't pass cementing if you don't have that ability. That's there. Okay. Just to summarize, for Rafaela, she had to start from basics when it came to arithmetic, algebra, and RC, whereas for Ayush, he just had to maintain performance over there, and in RC he had to refine to perfection. In Rafaela had a huge advantage in SC and CR, whereas for Ayush, he had to start from basics in SC, he had to master application in CR. So very, very different starting points, very, very different focus areas, even though the same end score. Okay. And this is the level of personalization. Remember, you've not even started your learning, but this has to happen before you start your learning. That level of understanding should exist. Okay. And we've been delivering this for the last 5 years. Now, a 730 plus score can actually make or break your chances of getting into a top B school. Okay. A lot of people think a 710 is good enough. I mean, even though you're aiming for that score, a lot of people kind of give up at a 710, 700. I've seen students do that. Now, because you've delivered the most 700 plus scores, we actually have students who've gone to B schools, and we can do some research overall. So in July, we started this research where we reached out to about 500 students who are studying at top B schools, and who've gotten admission into top B schools over the last 2 years or so. And we were using that data from about 500 students. We actually were able to get some very interesting stats. Okay. So first of all, M7 admits. I asked this question, what kind of school are you aiming for? And this is all on our admits and scholarship page. If you go to eGMAT.com and you go to, there's a new menu item which we released, which should have started showing up on Thursday onwards, which says admits and scholarships. You can really see all of that data over there. Okay. So what we found as we did our research was that 60% of students who got into an M7 school had a score of 740 or higher. But even a 740 doesn't guarantee that. Okay, the admit rate for people who applied to an M7 school and got in was about 28%. Now remember, but 80% of this sample size was international students. So this is primarily for international students, not for domestic or so. The admit rate for folks who actually were in that 710 to 730 bracket was about 13% or so. Okay. So really, really important. If you're aiming for that M7, aim for that 740 or higher score. Okay. Scholarships, if they're important to you. 45% of M7 admits who had a score of 730, 740 plus got a scholarship. 82% of T20, and for us T20 is outside of M7, so T20 does not include M7 schools, who had a GMAT score of 740 or higher got a scholarship or so. And again, when you combine them, you get the number over here. And these are very interesting stats for us. In fact, if you want to see what is that number for 710 to 730, you can actually toggle this button as well. Okay. And then 740 to 760, huge ROI. Okay. eGMATers have gotten upwards of $200 million worth of scholarships. That's what our estimate is. On our YouTube channel, you actually see about 10 to $10.5 million worth of scholarships. So you see interviews by students who've gotten that. Based on our research, again, the same sample, those 20 points between 740 and 760. So this is just those two scores, scholarships multiply. But and so I mean, when you look at this data point, do you think it's worth to score a 760 if you have a 740? It's worth to invest some time to get to a 760, sorry. Yeah, I mean, we all knew this, but this data was never quantified. Okay. And so this is the reason we did that was because, again, we want people to score higher, and there are times when your brain tells you to give up. Okay. Now, again, remember this, 730 plus, really, really essential. And I think for us, we've been very proud with regards to the products that we've been delivering that help you get to these scores. In fact, this year, and this is data from Jan till August, we've delivered more 700 plus scores. And this is just what's been reported on GMAT Club than any other prep company does. Now, I don't know if you've studied at any other prep company, but one of the arguments that people do give is they say, hey, eGMAT has more students. Actually, that's not true. When you look at all of these other GMAT Club partners, and this is all data on GMAT Club, so you guys can go verify this, they have about 3 times as many students as we do. Okay, so that's something that's not there. Now, what do you guys know eGMAT for? Quant or verbal? What do you guys know? You know us for verbal. Okay. This year we released our Quant 2.0 product, which is the first quant product that was created by Payal and her team. Our prior quant product was created by another SME who no longer works at eGMAT. And for those of you who know our verbal product, Payal created that. And for those of you who've worked with Payal, you know how thorough she is. We released our quant product this year. We actually started releasing it in December of last year at a reasonable degree. Algebra, so number properties, geometry, and then algebra was released by end of March. The impact that it has had is in terms of Q49 plus scores reported in 2021. You can really see that impact on verbal, that delta that we have. Now, a lot of people really say, hey, because you have non-natives who are reasonably good in quant, so that's why you have that. My argument is, so do these people. Their students are primarily Indians, but where are their Q49 plus scores? Okay. So again, if you want to really see more evidence, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You would see us posting 2 success stories to 3 success stories every week. You won't see anyone else post that. Similarly, connect with me on my LinkedIn, and you will see our students joining business schools or reporting their admits on LinkedIn way more consistently than you would see students from any other company. Okay. Again, these stats are there for you to see. And again, for those of you who just bought GMAT Intensive, I don't know if there are any discount coupons left with regards to deal, but because it's the beginning of the month, this is the only time we offer a discount on this. I took the screenshot yesterday, but I think I don't know if we still have coupons available, but yeah, if you want to save some money on GMAT Online Intensive, you can. or so. Okay. All right, with that, let's get into how do we build ability. Okay. So again, we've talked about the 3 stages of learning, and so we're going to now translate those 3 stages of learning into a real example. Just a summary of this, 730 plus is important. GMAT's a test of ability. We've really done that. PSP is important. It tells you where you need to focus on. And then there are those 4 stages of learning. Okay. Saurabh has a really important point. Saurabh says you're assuming that your products help students achieve the fantastic marks in quant, which is hardly to be believed. You're discounting on students' hard work and intelligence. Okay, great question, I would say, or great comment. Do you think I'm discounting on students' hard work when I say this chart over here? Do you think I'm doing that? Are you saying only our students do the hard work and all other people who go to other prep companies, they don't work hard? I mean, here's the same thing, you go to Harvard and you say, hey, Harvard has a statistic which says the high, a very high percentage of their graduates actually end up becoming CEOs or end up working in private equity. And would you say that Harvard should not stake a claim on that because, hey, it's the students? Yes, the students work hard. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we are providing a product. Our job is 40%. Your job to work hard is 60%. Okay. If you don't work hard, I'm not going to go take the test for you. You are taking the test. All right. But the fact really is when you compare alternatives, you have to really say, okay, which all. Yeah, I tell you where to work hard and the time, and I give you the metrics. We give you the right methods. I shouldn't say Pile gives you the metrics and the methods. And then it's you who has to still learn the methods. And that's true for any institution. Okay. All right. Harvard can't claim the success of their CEOs. What Harvard can claim is, and remember this, Harvard has a selection bias. They choose who they admit. We don't choose who buys our course. Even then, these results are that different. Okay. And neither do any of the other prep companies. You can go buy any course. No prep company says or refuses, B schools do, prep companies don't. Okay. But bottom line is, we are all part of a process. The input is students, the output is success. And you measure success and you really say, what's the role played by the process? Saurabh, does that help? Okay. And again, it's just about, not every student is successful. I will tell you that. But people who hit metrics on our platform are definitely successful. You ask any other prep company, and this is an open challenge to you. You ask any other prep company, you say, what is your success rate? You will not get a straight answer. You ask us, what is your success rate? I can tell you 80% of students who hit our metrics actually end up getting within 20 points of their target score. If you don't hit our metrics, I will also tell you 80% of our students who don't hit our metrics do not get within 20 points of their target score. It cuts both ways. Okay, my job is to teach you the right methods, or Pile's job is to teach you the right methods, and to tell you reality before you go on to attempting the test. That's how I consider our job. Okay, so now how do we do that job differently? How many of you are stuck at that 60th percentile in a certain subsection? And some of you who are even e-GMAT students would actually realize this. This is realization for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to compare 2 students. One who's at a 60th percentile and the other one who's at a 90th percentile. Both of these students actually have a similar starting ability. Okay, a 30th percentile ability. And a lot of people think, hey, acing the GMAT is about being smart. Their overall capability for me is similar. For me, smartness doesn't exist. Habits exist. Good habits. Good habits lead to success. Bad habits lead to failure. A 90th percentile student also invests about 40 hours in learning sentence correction if his or her starting ability is 30th percentile or so. Okay. Now, how they view that achieving perfection is very, very different. A 60th percentile student considers GMAT sentence correction to be about error types. They say, okay, I need to figure out the rules in SV, verbs, and pronouns and all of these various categories over there. If I know the rules, I'm going to figure out, how are the option choices different. I'm going to use splits, and then whichever split makes sense, that's kind of how I'm going to narrow it down and then get into it. Okay. A typical course, a typical book gives you about 7 to 10 feedback points of learning. You take that feedback points. A typical 60th percentile student spends about 30%, so it's 40 hours, so about 12 to 15 hours reading the book, learning theory and so on, and then 70% of the time practicing questions. Folks who have studied SC, not from the eGMAT platform, but from otherwise, does this mindset look familiar? Does this time spent look familiar? Yes, the processes are different, yes. It's a very different mindset. Okay. A few more folks, guys. I have 90 students here. Is that how you think about it? I know you guys are tired. I know I gave you a lot of information, but that's kind of where you find that last ounce of energy. It's only when you're 70% in the game, when you're sweating, when the brain's asking you to shut off, that's when you really find that and say, no, I am better than this. A 90th percentile student doesn't think as sentence correction to be about, hey, these error types. For him, GMAT SC is about sentence structures that test errors in these categories. Completely different mindset when you think about SC as sentence structures. Completely different mindset when you think about RC and CR as visualization. Then just simple assumption questions. If you think about these things as sentence structures and meaning, then the way you approach these subsections is very, very different. Okay. A 90th percentile student uses meaning as the primary method. Okay. For them, meaning is not an error type. They get a lot more feedback while learning, and they spend a lot more time. But 60 to 70% of their time is spent in stage 1. So remember, stage 1 is laying the bricks, learning the methods and processes. And because they spend so much time in stage 1, they only need 20 to 30% of their time doing cementing, or what is called as practice over here. Two very different outcomes because of two very different learning mindsets and processes. And that is the key for us. For us, when you think about GMAT SC, we don't look at error types. We teach you all the rules supposedly that you're supposed to learn, but they also have a logic in there. Okay. So the question is, if it's about 200 sentence structures, how can you achieve perfection if you only get 7 to 10 feedback points while learning? That's not going to happen. The other thing is, if that feedback points only tells you, hey, you have a modifier error, it doesn't tell you anything about sentence structure, you don't even, when you get that feedback point, you don't even know what the right corrective action is. Anyone doing strategic review here in SC during the cementing stage? Anyone over here doing strategic review? Yes. How do you categorize your feedback? The person who's doing strategic review, either in SC or CR. The way you categorize your feedback when you're doing a strategic review in SC is, I did not take into account every aspect of the meaning. I did not take that meaning aspects forward while evaluating the answer choices. I did not look at these sentence structures while mapping in the modifiers or so. It tells you why you faltered, not just the fact that, oh, you had a modifier error, but the fact really is this is the step that you faltered it. You did not do this piece right. And that's because it tells you a behavior. Correcting behavior is much easier and it's much more impactful. Okay. So just as a summary, how many feedback points we give you. You can see at each stage how many feedback points we give you, and these are personalized to you, built using technology. Someone was asking questions, why do you not do live sessions for the basics? Because even if we did a live session, we won't be able to give you these many personalized feedback points. Okay. And each feedback point is not based on a single question. That's one of the other things. One of the problems, the benefits with technology is it can be personalized, One of the biggest problems with technology is it's like an amplifier. You amplify the wrong thing, you get, it blasts your house. Which means that when you're giving a feedback point, you've got to average that feedback out before you give it. Otherwise, if you try and judge a student on each and every question, you send that student in multiple random directions. It's a zigzag curve that you get. Now you can really see my algorithm design piece coming in place. So for us, um, what really happens in this case is that for each feedback point, we do at a bare minimum 5 assessment items so that we average any what you may call it careless mistake error, so that we are definitive when we say you need help here. Okay. And you can really see how that feedback is done. If you go to our homepage, you probably can see this section, and if you click on this video over here, you'll be able to see how that feedback's delivered overall. Okay. Now let's kind of see how the method we do this is different. Do we have any live classes in the course? No, but it's because you don't need them. We used to have a live sessions course. People never attended it once they went through our course. They don't need it. They want personalization. And if you need personalization, we'll give it to you through the course. And if you need an interruption from an instructor, we'll try and figure out how we can do that. Timing is never a problem. Okay. Timing is a symptom. The day you call timing as a problem, you actually spend your energy in the wrong direction. How can eGMAT help you with that? I'm not going to go in here. Actually, come attend the SC session. We'll tell you how we'll address timing in SC, because how you address timing in every subsection is different. But remember, timing is never a problem. Timing is a symptom. The same way fever is never a problem. The problem is a viral or a bacterial infection or a fungal infection. Timing is never a problem. Okay. All right, so with that, I want you guys to solve this question, and we're going to really talk about how the eGMAT process is different. This is going to be just the end of the session. We're going to spend another 20 minutes just solving this question or so. Okay. Here are your answer choices. Let me just bring in the open poll. So what I want to do just before I show the question is I want you to actually select this option that says still solving. Okay, so that I don't time you guys as a group. Only when 60 to 70% of you actually choose an option other than still solving, I'll call time. So can I get about 30 people to 40 people to say still solving before I show the question? Okay, we have 30 people who are saying still solving. I'm going to remove broadcast results so that you guys, and here is the question. Go solve this question using the method that you usually Okay, another 15 seconds, guys. About 70% of you are done. Get those answers in. Five, four, three, two, and one. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. So, you guys can see 45% of you chose choice C. I was hoping to see a bit more participation given the number of students that we have. This is what I call as a zero risk environment, by the way. Choice D is really popular. Choice E is popular. Choice A is actually the least popular one, and then choice B is popular as well. The fact that choice A is not popular shows that you're able to figure out the grammar piece fairly easily because you'd reject choice A for grammar. The very fact that you chose on some of these other choices, and not many of you got it right, shows that you didn't get the meaning or the logic part correct. Now, how did you feel when you were solving this question? How did you feel? Long sentence, yes. Unsure, okay. A lot of moving parts, yes. That's a difficult question, yes. Difficult questions are the enjoyable ones. That's where you have the most learning. You had doubts on E because of it, okay. Frequent doubts, lots of moving parts, unsure, got it. Okay. So when you think about this, it's very difficult to get splits on this question because, when you look at this over here, this choice A says the church coin and then it has but over here. Choice B has while, which is a comparison or a contrast word, and then it has but as well. So does choice C. Choice D maintains the structure that choice A has. And choice E starts with this weird that over there, both, and it also has the contrast word but in this case. Okay. So overall, I mean, you technically you could try splits. It's just the number of combinations is going to be so many. The splits method will not be effective in doing this. By the way, we never ask you to use splits at eGMAT, just to really tell you. 500 level, 600 level, 700 level. It's all done through meaning. Okay, now let's kind of look at the meaning-based approach. One of the first things that we do in the meaning-based approach is that we look at, we pause the sentence, divide it into what we call as its constituent elements, and this is what we call as a sentence structure approach, and we extract aspects of the meaning. When we divide the sentence by strategically pausing, we are not looking to really figure out the grammar error. What we're trying to figure out is, what does the author want to say from this sentence? That's kind of our core thing. Okay. So when you think about this is the sentence divided into its constituent elements. The church coined the date February 14th as Valentine's Day with an ulterior motive. The church had an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia. That part, so the fact that the church coined is claimed by a few experts. Then the author really says, but it is celebrated on this day to why? For the reason is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. That aspect is the more prevalent belief. When you think about this and you say, okay, what is the author trying to communicate? The first thing the author is trying to communicate is that there are two claims about why February 14th is celebrated as Valentine's Day. One of the claims is that the church designated it and the church had a specific motive while designating it. The second claim is that it is done to honor the anniversary of Saint Valentine's death or burial. Claim one is done by a few experts. Okay, my annotation, let me get back my annotation and see if I can get them over here. Claim one is done by a few experts. Claim two is the more general purpose belief. Okay, none of these claims is by the author. Okay, the author merely is a communicator of information here. Now, tell me this. When you were reading this sentence, and this is a multiple response question, which of these are aspects of the meaning, which of the aspects could you not identify as from the original sentence? One, two, or three And you can choose multiple over here. This is a multiple response question. So you can say 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 3, 1, 2 and 3, all of them. Okay. Let's get more responses here. The question is, which of these aspects 1, 2 and 3 could you not identify? And you can see 1, 2 and 3 outlined over here. And this is excellent. Why is this excellent? Why? Because when you do this, this has nothing to do with grammar, but what this is saying, if 68% of those of you who are answering this question could not identify aspect 3, the fact that claim 1 is by one entity and claim 2 is by another entity, and the author is not making any one of these claims, 35% of you actually could identify that there are these two different claims, okay, about Valentine's Day. Very few of you actually faltered on claim 1. Now, what's the value of this? The value of this is now as an individual, and this is what we do in the strategic review process. One step of this is now you can really figure out what should you focus on to get such questions right. It has nothing to do with a modifier error or something. It's to really say, hey, I did not spend enough time cataloging what all did the author want to communicate. Okay, we already did that. Okay, if you were able to identify all three aspects, then good, you understood the meaning while reading this original sentence. If you weren't able to identify either one of them, then you need to enhance that skill set of extracting what the author wants to say. Does that make sense? Does that feedback make sense? Right? It's really, really important. Nothing to do with grammar so far. Okay. Now we have this meaning analysis. Let's kind of do errors in the original sentence. All right. When you think about the sentence structure, what you would find is that these two verbs, my annotation, these two don't have associated subjects. You have 4 subject verb pairs, 2 verbs don't have subjects. You have missing subjects. That's a problem. Clearly, choice A is correct. Now we know the meaning. Now we know why choice A is wrong. Let's kind of go look at every answer choice. Now, before we do answer choice analysis, what I want to really do is show you how you did this. Now, just to really tell you, I am not an SC expert at eGMAT. Okay, I'm a CR, RC expert. I can do quant. I'm not an SC expert. I won't be able to do as much justice as an SC expert would, as Payal, Shraddha, or Stacy, or Kanupriya would. So forgive me if my explanations aren't as lucid, but I'm going to try and do my best. Okay. So this is how you guys polled on this particular question. All right. Let's look at choice B. While with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim. Who has the ulterior motive here? Who has the ulterior motive here? A few experts. Is that what the author intended to communicate? How are you saying it's the church? While with an ulterior motive, a few experts do claim. In this sentence structure, the ulterior motive belongs to whom? A few experts. Can you see that? Right? Which is why this answer choice is wrong. Now you could call it's modifier error. I call it sentence structure error because this is how this sentence is structured in this case. So it has 2 errors. First of all, it illogically suggests, and you can really see. So this is the original sentence for you. These are the aspects of meaning. Every answer choice would be explained in this particular manner. So these are the 3 aspects of meaning. This is choice B, so you can refer to this. And over here is the reason why this is wrong. So first is illogical. It suggests that a few experts present their claim. Okay, and then while presenting this information, it fails to capture the ulterior motive that the church had, right? So it doesn't communicate the entire meaning. First, it communicates the wrong meaning, and then it takes away the motivation that the church had. For both these reasons, choice B is wrong. Okay. Now, is this a meaning error, a modifier error, or a sentence structure error, or all three? I would call it a sentence structure error that leads to a meaning error. Yes. Because the ultimate goal in this case is to communicate the intended meaning. Okay. So modifier and sentence structure. So when you call this a modifier error, the problem really is you're not correcting the cause, which is that you weren't able to identify the changes in sentence structure that led to a difference in meaning, which by the way was a modifier error. All right. Now, is there any grammar issue with this? If you look at choice B, any grammatical issue? No. If this is the meaning you wanted to communicate, the sentence is fine. The problem is you did not want to communicate that meaning. It adds the subjects that were missing, by the way. And this is where focus on meaning, understanding the aspects, extracting the aspects is really important. Let's look at choice C. Choice C is over here, by the way. The biggest group chose choice C. While a few experts claim that the church coined the blah, 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 with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration, their more prevalent belief. Who does this correspond to? Their more prevalent belief? Who does their correspond to here? The same set of experts. Is that what the author intended to communicate? No. Again, any grammar error? Absolutely not. Beautiful sentence structure, just the wrong meaning. Which is why choice C is incorrect. The problem with, again, the behavioral, the conceptual error log, which is what most of you think about, is you have no means to catalog this in a sustainable manner. Someone who chose this, why would you make a mistake? Folks who chose this answer choice, you corrected the grammatical error, but what mistake did you make when you chose this answer choice? Okay, you didn't read there. What is the precise mistake? Okay, so there could be two mistakes, two scalable mistakes. One is either you did not understand this aspect of meaning early on, that claim 1 and claim 2 are by two different entities, or even if you understood, you did not take it forward while evaluating the answer choices. Okay, you lost the meaning while reading this answer choice. It has to be one of these two behaviors. Either you didn't understand the meaning in the first place, what is it that the author intended to communicate, you were really lost in finding those grammatical errors, or B, you didn't carry it forward, right? Which was it for you? Did not understand it in the first place, or did not carry it forward if you understood it in the first place? It's just these two categories that matter here. Didn't understand. If you didn't understand it, then what's the corrective action for you? What is the corrective action? Okay, focus on meaning, spend more time early on. Right? If you didn't carry it forward, then make sure you carry it forward. Though that's it, it's as simple as that. Okay, and that's the behavior, that's kind of a component of the behavioral log that we have. Do we get time to reread and understand? Reread? No, you get time to read. You don't get time to reread. You've got to get really good at reading. And that's what we teach. How do you get really good at reading sentence structures? Which is why we have so many more 700 plus scores. How many of you have attended a live session by another company or so on SC? How many of you have? Just you have, okay. Let's just do a yes no poll. I know some of you guys are tired. Or any other live session overall where they teach you how to solve an SC question. Just a yes no poll. How many of you have? Okay. No one yeses? Try attending a live session by any other company. You would not find them approach. If you've attended a live session, do they approach SC in such a scientific fashion? So if you have attended another live session in the short answer pod, do they approach SC in such a scientific fashion? They won't. Right? No one does that. This is our third generation of meaning-based approach. Some of them will start copying it soon, but no one does it in this particular way. Most of them say they focus on meaning. They don't focus on meaning even now. So yes. Okay. Let's look at choice D. Now choices A, B, and C are fairly easy. If you focus on meaning, you should be able to reject them. Choice D is incorrect, but choice D is a what I call as a nuanced meaning. Okay. And so to do that, I'm going to actually show you an example. Okay. And this is something that's going to come out. It's tested very, very heavily in the context of RC, and it's also tested in difficult SC questions over here. So let's kind of take this example over here. Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine. All right. Now, when you look at this, when you make that statement, that Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine, are you communicating information? Yes or no? Are you communicating information? Yes, you're communicating information, right? Are you yourself making a claim here? Are you making a claim here? No, you're not. You're just merely communicating information. You're saying, hey, Forbes magazine is saying Apple is the market leader. You are not saying Apple is the market leader. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Absolutely not. All you're doing is communicating information. Okay, it's the Forbes magazine that is claiming. Okay, and this is the nuanced aspect of sentence structure and how it translates to meaning. Now let's kind of look at this statement. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. Are you communicating information? Of course, yes, you are. Are you also making a claim? Yes, you are. What you're really saying is, hey, Harvard is best as Business Week said. When you're saying Harvard is best as Business Week said, what you're saying is, hey, Harvard is best. I am saying that because Business Week is saying that. So you're putting your weight behind it. Okay. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Yes, you should be. Because you put forth a report, which is, and you're basing that based on what Forbes magazine said. But what you're really saying is, hey, maybe Forbes gave such compelling evidence that I also back that compelling evidence. Do you understand the nuanced difference between is versus as over here? Very important. Now, in the original sentence, again, we talked about this. I'm going to go forward. In the original sentence, was the author making a claim himself? Was the author backing either one of these claims? In the original sentence, no, he wasn't. But over here, as claimed by a few experts means that the author is backing that claim, identical sentence structure. Then similarly on the second claim, but as celebration on this date is to honor the anniversary of this, the more prevalent belief. Again, the author is backing the claim. Nothing grammatically right. Both claims are given by two different set of experts. However, the author is backing both claims now in this case, and essentially that makes it wrong. That just changes what the author originally intended to do. Okay. Because of this, choice D is wrong, which gets us to a correct answer choice, which is choice E. Choice E does not hold author accountable. It says that the church coined is claimed by few experts, but the more prevalent belief comes up first. That's the doer of the action. It is celebrated on this day to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. Claim 1 is correct. Claim 2 is correct. Aspect 1 is correct. Aspect 2 is correct. Aspect 3 is correct. The author is not holding responsibility for any of these. He's merely a communicator of information. Hence, choice E is correct. Okay. Now, a lot of people actually reject choice E. Why? Because they say, hey, you have that as a subject in the SV. That it doesn't sound very elegant. All right. Some people really say, hey, there is a that missing over here. So that has to become used over here. So that's why I'm going to remove that. And some people really say is claimed is passive voice, and passive voice is always wrong. So I'm not going to actually choose this. How many of you actually had one of these considerations while rejecting this answer? Which one? 1, 2, or 3? All of them. Yes. None of them is a rule. GMAT SC is not supposed to be elegant. It's supposed to be precise. Okay. Passive voice is fine. Who told you passive voice is wrong? How did you figure out passive voice is wrong on the GMAT? How many of you think being is wrong on the GMAT? How many of you think being is wrong on the GMAT? Okay. In 2013, we wrote an article. All right. First one over here. You can actually go where we debunked that mean. 2013, actually 2014. I'm sorry. Being, remember this. A lot of people look at stats and really say, hey, if being is wrong in 80% of the answer choices, let me teach, because it's a neat trick. I can figure that out and I can sell my stuff. No. If you're, what percentile score are you looking for on SC? If you're aiming for that 730 score that you may be looking for, and I know you need to get that personalized study plan, but many of you would be looking at an 80th or a 90th percentile score in SC, correct? Right? Now, if you're looking for that 90th percentile score in SC, then are you likely to get a sentence in which you have a usage that's incorrect 80% of the time? Are you likely to get that? Right? That's what's going to happen. So if you're aiming for that 90th percentile, you're going to get those statistically unlikely scenarios. Okay. So again, if someone tells you this is wrong, 80, some people think, okay, all is wrong in CR answer choices or absolutes. Everything is wrong in CR answer choices. Why? Because, usually it's not in the correct option. Choose options with most, choose options with many, don't choose options with all. Have you guys heard that in CR? Don't choose options with all. Yeah, don't do that. If you want to apply stats, solve stats questions, not verbal questions. Don't apply stats on verbal. Doesn't work. Especially if you're aiming for high verbal scores. Yes, if you were aiming for a V32, 33, yes, you can do that, which is, 60th percentile. But not when you're aiming for a 90th percentile or so. Okay. Focus on logic. You would be well served if you focus on learning logic or so. Okay. So again, bottom line is, if you want to achieve that 90th percentile, you have to first have the right foundation, then learn the right method. Someone talked about master comprehension. It's the foundational course. And in fact, in August and September, we've actually enhanced that, and we're further enhancing that overall. Then you need to make sure you learn the right methods. You need to perfect those methods. And then finally, you need refinement. Okay. And at every stage, you need feedback. Now, the two stories that I talked about, Magdalena and Pratik, V48, V47 guys. These guys, Pratik, who scored a V47, which is better than 99 percentile, he went through the SC files, 1.5 times, or in other words, verb-ing modifier files, he went through that file 4 times. Comparison file, he went through each comparison file twice. Why? Because during cementing, he recognized that's where he was making logic and or meaning based errors. And that's important. How do you improve on logic? Any books? No, no books. You have the eGMAT course. Don't go to any. Remember, this is not formal logic. This is expression. This is sentence structures. It's the foundation of all learning, all English. But 90th percentile is based on perfection in all areas, which means you need that feedback. Why? Because each one of you will have natural strengths and weaknesses. Why do you think each one of you has natural strengths and weaknesses? Why? Because each one of you is familiar with certain sentence structures, is not familiar with other sentence structures. Depending on the ones that you're not familiar with, that's where you're going to make mistakes, and that's where that personalized feedback will help you fix those sentence structures. How many of you practice questions on eGMAT platform? How many of you have practice questions on Scholaranium or in the course? Yes. How detailed are the solutions compared to what you might see on another platform? And you look at a Scholaranium, very detailed. Why do you think that is the case? Some of you might say, man, this is an overkill. No, it is not. Why? Because each question has to provide that learning to fix that sentence structure. If you don't provide those detailed solutions, you will not fix that sentence structure gap or that logic gap that you guys have. And that's the purpose. But it's on you to read through those solutions. How do you retain so much information? Is there an eGMAT student who would like to answer that? How do you retain? First of all, is that so much information if it's logical? Is it? Remember, it's not rules. It's logic. Our brains are designed to absorb logic. They're not designed to absorb rules. Our brains are a very bad source of storing, are a very bad memory source, but they're a beautiful logical source. Okay. And you retain by cementing, yes. Okay. Again, those feedback points are really important. Yeah, as you train to think like the author, exactly. I am glad someone said that. That's what you're supposed to do. Think like the author. Okay. And go through these stages of learning. Please do not skip the stages of learning. You do that, you will likely start over again, and it'll hurt you. It'll hurt us too, because we'll have to tell you how to do that. I mean, there's a guy who wrote a debrief, I think a couple of weeks back, and his debrief was titled, I spent $3,200 on my preparation and a year on my preparation. He started with the eGMAT course, skipped these stages of learning. He skipped the first stage. He actually skipped two modules in the SC course, went into Scholaranium, exhausted all of Scholaranium, then went, bought the Manhattan course, did that, took the GMAT, then went, bought another Magoosh course, did that, took the GMAT, came back to us because he didn't succeed. Then we really said, go through the entire course that he had gone through again. Then we had to create specific set of quizzes from the official questions for him because Scholaranium was exhausted. In fact, we had some questions in our repository that we had not put in production. We had to give those questions to him. And finally, he was able to get to a 740. But I mean, it was very painful for him. It was very painful for us. We had to dip through our reserves because he did not follow these stages of learning. Don't do that. You know, most people who follow these stages of learning, even in subsections where they're starting at a 20th percentile, they use about 60% of content in Scholaranium. That's all that they use. On the other hand, there are people who start at 50th percentile, do not follow these stages of learning, exhaust all the questions, and then come back. So don't do that. Follow the stages of learning. If you have doubts, write to us. Okay. Just how does this feedback given? Every activity over here is evaluated. When you see these scores, this is not your file completion. This is your file evaluation. This timing over here is the time that you took, not the length of file. Each one of you will have different timings here. Okay. Now what you see over here is this guy scored 60% in subject verb application. This is the smallest module in the SC course. Okay. Even though he scored 60%, he spent a ton of time. He revised his mistakes, because of which in the next practice quiz, he was able to score 100%. Okay. Similarly, in verbs, verbs is reasonably detailed. What you see is he scored 60% over here. What you also see is that in verb sequencing, he spent an hour, which it requires an hour. In verbs application, he actually spent close to 50 minutes or so. Now, he revised these questions here. How do we know that? We actually dug into his quiz and we looked at the fact that he had bookmarked his mistakes. Okay. So, because of which he was actually able to score. Let's just go back over here. There's a quiz that is here at the end. He was able to score 100% in this quiz over here. And for him, the issue was, again, that precision. He said, I know the concepts, and he read books, he knew the concepts, but he was not following the meaning-based approach, which is what we call as application. And that for him is the game changer. So with that, I am done with the webinar. Again, just a summary. Aim for a top score because it makes a difference. Build ability to get a top score. Why? Because that's what the GMAT tests. Build that personalized study plan because it tells you where to focus. Follow the stages of learning, really important, and make sure you adhere to the feedback that's given to you. Okay, and again, we've done a bunch of stuff in 2021. Scholarinium 2.0, the AI Expertica that we've released, the new quant course. Also, the custom learning paths that the new quant course give you, and the last mile push program. You can get access to all of that and more in our deal. Okay. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today on the right-hand pod. If you can give me some feedback, that'd be great. Michaela says, Vinita says, what's the answer to the SC question? Choice E, Vinita. Michaela, when should you start simulations? Are you saying mock tests, Michaela? Just to be clear. And let me give you the web links. Here is the link to the deal. Let me send you the session PDF as well. Here is the session PDF. Okay, when should you start mocks? Great question. For take the first mock early on. Then you should start taking mocks about 2 to 3 weeks before your actual test, and after you've hit the metrics on the eGMAT platform. Okay. When you finish the whole course in stage 1, no, you do stage 1 and stage 2, then go back to the next subsection, do stage 1, stage 2, and then stage 3, then go back to the next subsection, then do that. So don't just do stage 1, do stage 1 and stage 2 together, please. Okay. Okay, how to register for the upcoming webinars? Yes, sorry about that. Let me share those links overall. Upcoming free sessions. Here's the geometry webinar that is tomorrow. Okay. And the SC webinar, that's next week. Again, remember, geometry webinar, Payal would be hosting it. I won't miss it. SC webinar, that'll be Shraddha and Stacy. Okay. You can click on register now and join. Otherwise, let's see. YouTube links for successful stories. Okay, let's just get YouTube links for customer success stories. I'm going to give you the links to the webinars. I'm sorry, guys. Over here, customer success stories. And again, you'll see here are the ones. Just scroll down. Let me just make sure, guys, these links are clickable. Sandeep, if you could get the link, well, I'm going to get the links anyway. So the Geo webinar link is here. It's going to come up under session files very soon. Actually, under September deal. The Geo webinar link is there. Yeah, and this under the September deal, I'm going to hide this. I'm going to increase the size of that pod, and I'm going to get the link to the SC webinar as well. Okay. All right. Here's the link to our SC webinar under the September deal, top left-hand pod. All right, guys. Any other question? I'd be happy to answer that. If you want to see student journeys for M7 schools, top 20 schools, European business schools, go to our admits and scholarship page. I think we have about 25 journeys for every student, for every category actually. So ISB and all, and be able to not just see their GMAT journeys, but also their MBA journeys. How did they portray leadership? Let me give you the link to admits and scholarship page as well. Okay. All right, again, top left-hand corner, you can see link number 5 is for admits and scholarships. All right, guys. Link for Gandhi and where you draw the comparison, it's on the home page, Ashish. So Ayush and Rafaela, both of them are on the home page in section 5. You scroll down in the study plan section, you can see that link. If you want their success stories, they are on our YouTube channel. So if you search for Ayush Gandhi, Columbia, you'd be able to get to that on YouTube, and Rafaela, Harvard, you should be able to get to that on YouTube as well. Pranay says, I gave an attempt, I got a Q45. How difficult would it be to go from a 45 to a 51? I mean, I can't tell you how difficult. I can tell you what steps you would need to take, and I can tell you what metrics you would need. So yeah. So Pranay, yeah. Again, 45 is a really great starting point. So yeah. So again, send me the scores. 45 to 50. We don't really go towards 51. I'll be very frank, because 50 to 51 is a very slippery slope. So we get you to 50. You then practice and hope you don't make any error, because 50 to 51 is about super precision overall. But 45 to 50 is about 60 hours of effort. So 45 is a really great starting point. Yes, it's an excellent starting point. If you think about it, 47 is the minimum score that GSB Chicago will get you, and GSB Chicago or Columbia for that matter. And these schools look for a bare minimum quant score also. So 45 is a really good starting point. And one of the things that you can really see is how we personalize your quant learning. So if you look at this chart, AI analytics and support, and for those of you who really want to know how we do support, so atomic learning paths will tell you how we personalize your quant course, how we use the strengths that you have built in that 45, so that you focus your energy only on the areas that that you're weak in. Okay. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Again, if you're looking for a course, don't miss out on the deal if you still have coupons available. And I'll see you tomorrow in the geometry session. Thank you and have an excellent day.